All right. Hello, everybody. I hope you all are doing well. Of course, this is DFS Army's tournament strategy show. I had some stuff come up yesterday, wasn't able to do it, but today we are back. We have a nice 5-gamer on deck. I played pretty light yesterday, but from my understanding, that was a bit of a craziness. Thankfully, today will be a bit more calm. The amount of questionables, not really more calm, but the slate itself should be. Thomas Die, hope you're doing well, man. Hope yesterday was kind to you. But anyway, guys, let's jump into it. This is an interesting slate. I have some stands that I feel pretty good about, and then some spots that, per usual, we'll just have to wait and see. Of course, when you just look at the slate in general, the games that stand out the most is this Lakers Mavs game. This is where I expect most of the ownership to be. This Warriors Suns game is the game with the highest total. Uh, could be interesting. There's some spots here I like, but a lot of it will depend on injury news. And then last but not least, second highest game total is the Kings against the Clippers. This is another game I look to target a good bit on this slate, but again, will be a little bit more interesting if we get some news that I think will spice up that game. But let's start off with this Cleveland Cavs against the Celtics game. The Cavs have been pretty good this year, you know? The issue with the Cavs for me is just this matchup against the Celtics. Pretty good defense. Team I don't like to pick on too much. The only guy that's kind of on my radar is Donovan Mitchell at 9,200. He's been in really good form here lately. Multiple games at this point where he scored more than, was it at least around like 40 points or so. Yeah, I mean, he's had close to 50-point games. He scored 54 against Miami, 55 against Orlando. He's just been in really good form. He did struggle in his last game around 38 points, but 9,200 keeps him viable. But again, I think there's better plays on this slate. Outside of that, Evan Mobley being questionable is important-ish. I mean, I think we know at this point Niang and Okoro are the guys who see the minutes here. Of course, Levert being questionable matters a little bit too, but these guys just are not great fantasy point producers, and in tough matchups, I'm not really excited about forcing it here. So it's strange. Don't love the matchup, but I don't really plan on playing any of these Cavs guys outside of maybe Mitchell here, even if Mobley ends up getting ruled out. If Mobley's out, I'm a little bit more interested in Jared Allen, but even that I'm not super excited about. Kenger, yes, no more 2-game slates, no more 13-game slates. 5 to 9 is the right number. And I think we have that for a good bit over the next few days, so we're good. we're now in the clear. But yeah, it was not my favorite slates. Dixon, hope you're doing well, man. Hope all is well. Zolo, Mo, whole crew, good to see everybody in here. For those of you curious, Brandon will be on the pre-lock show all week, which is at 5:30 p.m. Eastern for VIP members only. Link in the description if you're curious. But he will not be able to make this show this week. So pros and cons, at least we have them for the afternoon. Travis, man, hope you're doing well. So yeah, kind of boring. Don't like the Cavs. Also, the spread's pretty wide, which makes me a little bit more nervous about guys like Mitchell. But I do think Allen is still fine, but there's other bigs I prefer on this slate. Similar story for the Celtics. When they are all healthy, it's really hard for me to get overly excited about playing any of them. Tatum at 9,900 is interesting, but again, Cavs have been a pretty solid defense this season. They do allow more points in the paint, obviously, when Mobley is out. But again, still hard for me to get overly excited about that. Maybe a boost to Porzingis here, but he's not really the best inside scorer either. So there's some interesting plays with guys like Tatum and Porzingis. Any of these guys can get hot. We know that, but you're really just dart throwing. There's no one who's really standing out from a projection standpoint or even in the sim model. So hard for me to lean one way or the other. Wouldn't shock me if we have to play a little bit of guys like White or some of these like some Sam Hauser plays like that aren't exciting, but because we don't have a ton of value right now, it's okay to have them in the mix. But I don't foresee myself being over the field to any of these guys currently. So we'll see. The other games on this slate are way more interesting. I'm not Xing this game out of my player pool or anything like that. That's a little extreme, but I'm not super excited about it. Hey, good to have you. Glad you're able to make the show live. Dixon said Lakers gonna blitz Luka, leaving plenty of open wide shooters. Wouldn't shock me. Speaking of that game, though, let's get to it. We have the Lakers against the Mavs. We talk about this all the time. Uh, Mavs, not a great defense, play at a very slow pace. So that's the bucket I put them into. The Lakers won the in-season tournament. There could be a little bit of a hangover. Is that a thing? Is there an in-season tournament champion winner hangover? It's possible. But I'm not going to run with that narrative too much here. Again, this is one of the higher total games on the slate. Of course, Anthony Davis and LeBron James are questionable. Usually, Anthony Davis is probable. So, him being questionable does raise a little bit of a red flag for me. They do have a game that they're playing again tomorrow, so they're on the front end of a back-to-back. But as of right now, assuming Anthony Davis plays, this game is lock is at 7:30 p.m. tonight, so we should have that news well in advance. So, assuming Anthony Davis plays, we know I like playing bigs against the Mavs. They are not a great defensive team in the paint, and so I feel better about Anthony Davis than some of the other options available for the Lakers tonight. LeBron is fine. This is a nationally televised game, 9,700. A little hard for me to get overly excited about him in a slower paced game against the Mavs, but he's still viable in a nationally televised game. D'Lo, not as excited about him. I do like Austin Reeves' price tag at 5,800. Again, I'll need to keep a close eye on ownership, but when we're in these high total games, I'm a little bit more open to playing some of the more volatile players like Russell and Reeves. And that does extend into the rest of the bench. Let's see. Cam Reddish, not overly excited about him, but he's playing decent minutes at 4,400. Rui, hard for me to get super excited about, not playing a ton of minutes here lately, but we know the upside can be there. I think Taurean Prince is where, unless we get better value on the slate, guys, this is not an exciting play by any means, but Taurean Prince, as of right now, is that value guy that's just fitting into a lot of my lineups. I'm hoping we get the news that we want from the Mavs today, so I don't have to go crazy with Taurean Prince here. But right now, he's making a lot work, so I'm okay with him being in the mix. He sees decent minutes, but he's a low usage guy. We know how that can go, so just keep that in mind. Outside of that, guys like Max Christie, Hayes, Vanderbilt, not overly excited about them today. The priorities for me is Anthony Davis. Anthony Davis is my priority on the slate if he plays. Outside of that, I'm okay getting exposure because of the high total, but I don't love anything in particular here. It's just necessity. I just kind of have to play some of these guys out of necessity. Let's see here. C-Mar said NBA has been kicking my ass this season. Last week was tough for me, but the season as a whole is still net positive, which I'll take. But last week is pushing that narrative to its brink. Zolo said Garland getting in good form. Is he? Let me see. Am I missing anything with Garland? Yeah, he did have that 55 game against Orlando, which was pretty good. Definitely did have a little bit of a rough spell there for a good bit, but he's been fine. Yeah, Garland's been in decent form. I wouldn't say like he's been what I expect him to be. He's had some good games. He's had some lower point games, but he's been fine. I think for me, it's just the matchup against the Celtics that I'm not overly excited about, but I think there's a lot of dart throw type of plays in that game in general. Just no one really stood out for me. Dixon. Josh said injury news makes NBA so hard. It does, especially on 13 gamers, but honestly, I kind of wish we would be getting we were getting more. I think what's made NBA a bit tougher this season is we haven't had all of the awesome value we've had over the last few years due to COVID and injuries and things of that sort. So it's been a little bit tougher, but yeah, it is what it is. It is what it is. We have to take what we're given. So hopefully we start to get a little bit more. Dixon said, Josiah, did you see Boggy go nuclear last night after Trey got ejected? I didn't see it, but I heard about it. So, yeah, it's crazy how sometimes even in-game injuries can boost guys' performances like crazy. But anyway, one of the teams that I'm hoping we get some value from today is this Mavs team. As of right now, Tim Hardaway Jr. is listed as TBD. Grant Williams is TBD. Derek Jones Jr. is listed as TBD. And then, of course, Kyrie Irving is out. Already, we've been playing guards against the Lakers all season. this is a team I like to pick on. Dixon had a really good point here. If you're playing the coach narrative, it's very possible that they do try um, to limit what Luka can do tonight, not having other options here with guys like Irving, etc., who can be really strong scorers. Even Tim Hardaway Jr., if he doesn't play, that could limit things. But to be honest with you, I don't really care. um, I like the way Luka does everything for this team, and there's not really very many ways a lot of teams have been able to stop him. So I'm not overly concerned about that, or I'm not going to overthink it. I just see it as a really good spot for Luka, and I think he's the best pay up option on the slate as of right now. That could change with some other injury news we might get by the time we get to lock, but for now, I think Luka's probably the best play on the slate. Let's see, Kanger spread 2.5. I mean, I think you're thinking the spread should be wider and the Lakers should be ahead by more. But I mean, the Mavs have, I could be making stuff up here, but I feel like they usually keep games close. And again, it wouldn't shock me if one of LeBron or um, Davis end up not playing tonight, just because this is the front end of a back to back for them. So that could be part of why the spread is relatively close too. But we'll see. Yeah, exactly, Kanger. That wouldn't shock me. The spread is a little close. It does seem a little close, but at least we'll get the news by lock. As long as we get it by lock, it's okay. And we'll get some interesting value if that happens too. So good call out. Definitely need to keep an eye out for that. Josh Nork said Hardy chalk gross. Hardy, he's kind of gross. I liked him a little bit yesterday once we got the news that Tim Hardaway was going to be out. And of course, Derek Jones Jr., him potentially being out too, that helps even more. So Hardy feels kind of crappy when he's really chalky, but he's willing to shoot, which is not something you can say for some players on this team. So I'm comfortable with Hardy chalk. I'm comfortable with Exum chalk, especially if Tim Hardaway Jr. ends up missing this game. If Hardaway plays, that's when I'm a little bit more nervous about guys like Exum and Hardy. But, you know, we'll just have to wait and see what happens with the news there. But Doncic is someone that I like a lot. Hardy, I like a good bit if the Tim Hardaway and crew end up missing. And then, of course, other guys I would want some exposure to would be Exum and Lively as well. So this little trio right here from like the 4,600 range to 5,700 range, really good spot if Tim Hardaway ends up missing. And then Seth Curry is fine as a flyer, but I'm not overly excited about him. I do like the minutes that Prosper's seeing, but his usage rate is so bad. I don't foresee myself getting there unless, again, Tim Hardaway Jr. is out. Then I'm a bit more open to it. So we'll see. But I like the value from this team against the Lakers tonight, to be honest. Yeah, Zola, the Lakers have been playing pretty good defense all season. Just kind of across the board from beginning to end, even before the in-season tournament kicked off. The interesting thing is that they still allow decent fantasy points to players, which is kind of weird for me to get past, is like realizing a team is playing good real life defense, but we've still seen some guards and some centers have some explosive games against them. It's weird. I just just keep it in mind that people can still go off against them. Josh said you should have to report any injury before 4 to 5 p.m. CP3 randomly sat out with an illness a few days ago. Pretty sure they knew. Yeah, there's been a lot of weird injury stuff this year that's super frustrating that I really hope they fix, because little stuff like that might not matter in the short term as much, because I don't think anyone was really playing CP3. But long term, we've been seeing this become a little bit of a trend of us just getting news way too late, and they have to fix that. Let's see. Josh said, I think today is more balanced than stars and scrubs. Yeah, I don't disagree. I think if Tim Hardaway Jr. ends up getting ruled out, I'll be a bit more stars and scrubs. But for now, it's looking more of like a balanced day, which the Clippers help out a lot with. Zillow said if Hardaway plays, I'll like him a lot. He's going to chuck. Yeah, that's a good thing to mention too. Like if Tim Hardaway plays, he, just like yesterday, he was a core play. He will be a core play once again, just because he shoots a crap ton and shot ideally will fall. And 5,900 isn't bad. He is a little bit more expensive than I would like for him to be, but he's decent in this spot. So I like the Mavs in general is the takeaway here. I like the Lakers with AD, and I like the Mavs. Hopefully AD plays. If he doesn't, then that's a big boost to LeBron, and we'll talk about that a bit more on the pre-lock show. What we'll do in that situation. Let's see. Next up, we have the Nuggets against the Bulls. These are two really slow-paced teams. The Bulls aren't a good defensive team, but they also play at a slow pace, so it really doesn't make their bad defense look as bad. So outside the jump, here we are once again. Jokic, 11,900, looking a little cheap for the upside he has here. That's the case on every given slate. You all know I'm always willing to play Jokic, and I will have some exposure to him on this slate. Outside of that, let's see. I believe Jamal Murray, is he still questionable? No, he's not. He wasn't on the injury report at all. So with the Nuggets looking pretty healthy here, I am really only looking at Jokic as the only guy I'll have exposure to, but I'm comfortable having some Jamal Murray exposure depending on where his ownership is. Not overly excited about the situation, but if he's low owned, we know he has enough upside to perform in these kind of spots. So outside of that, Gordon and Porter, not a big fan of Gordon here. Just hasn't been showing us a lot of ceiling this season. And then MPJ is your streaky shooter per usual. Outside of that, I'm really hoping we don't have to get gross and dirty and nasty playing these cheapies for the Nuggets tonight. But ideally, we won't have to. None of these guys are really standing out for me. The only guy I'm open to at this point is KCP, and that's just purely a minutes thing. He's useless outside of that. The Bulls side of the ball is also another tough one. We have Alex Caruso listed as questionable, so that could make things a little bit more interesting. Of course, Zach LaVine has been out for a good chunk of time here. For me, when it comes to the Bulls, I don't think they're going to be super popular against the Nuggets, but I also don't love them a ton. Let me double check the sim model and see if I'm missing anything here. I feel like I'm just being a negative Nancy so far. Only good things I've had to say were with the Lakers and the Mavs. Outside of that, haven't loved what I'm seeing here. Okay, let's see. DeMar DeRozan, sim model likes Vucevic and Leonard a good bit more. Let's see. Let's look at Vuce. Okay. So Vucevic is someone I'm comfortable playing at 8K. You all know I don't love picking on guys playing against Jokic. Again, I'll have to check and see where ownership falls with him. If he ends, I don't foresee him being the super chalk of yesterday, or I don't see him being super chalky today. But if he ends up being a chalky big, then I'm fine fading him. But assuming he's going to be at lower ownership, I'm totally cool having a good bit of Vucevic exposure. Let's see. Anyone else we should look at? Is Kobe White worth looking at? Let's see. Kobe is 7,200. Yeah, Sim model is not a fan. It even prefers guys who we already talked about, Jamal Murray, just 100 more. I agree. I like Jamal Murray's upside way more. And then it likes someone that you guys are probably going to hate a good bit more too. So, yeah, Vucevic's really the only guy I'm looking at for the Bulls. Maybe B-Dubs might be able to talk me into DeRozan or Kobe White, but I'm not excited outside of that. AO, you all saw, I think Josh is talking about it. AO yesterday pulled a Tony Snell, 0 stats, 26 minutes. Yeah, when I say these guys are low usage players, I mean it. These guys can easily go out there and pull a 0 and just have a full cardio day. I understand how you don't get one rebound or anything in 28 minutes. No, I don't get it. But God, this team is bad. So yeah, not excited about them. Patrick Williams at 5,700 makes me sick to my stomach. He should not be that price. But again, he might just make a good bit work here. Let's see, in early runs, I do have a little bit of Kobe White, a little bit of Patrick Williams, a little bit of Drummond, but nothing substantial. So the only guy I'm looking at here really is Vucevic. And even when you look at these runs too, it looks like we're getting a little bit of Pritchard, a little bit of Hauser. And that's just because we're desperate for value. But outside of that, we're getting Mavs, Lakers, and a little bit of Clippers. Jared Allen's showing up a good bit. We touched on him. I like him if Mobley's out. If Mobley's in, I won't have this kind of exposure to Allen. Yeah, Josh, in my mind, I just kind of assumed that he would be listed as questionable. It wouldn't shock me if he ends up getting a late Q tag, but as of right now, he's not on there at all. But yeah, definitely another thing to look out for. If Murray's out, that does make guys like MPJ and Gordon much more viable to me. Of course, whoever would start for him, Reggie Jackson, I would assume at 6,300 would be okay, but still not someone I would try to force in. I would still rather prefer guys like Porter Jr. and Aaron Gordon. Let's see. Is there anything we're missing there? The guys who see the highest increase in usage is KCP with a 1.6% increase in usage. 5,600. Still not super excited about that, guys, but would be a little slightly more viable. MPJ's next up with a 1.1% increase, Jokic 1%, and then DeAndre Jordan 0.8% increase in usage. So again, would just be more excited about Jokic, more excited about Porter Jr., and I would still be willing to take a shot on Aaron Gordon if Murray's out. But we'll have to keep an eye out for that. That's just a lot of what ifs. He's not on the injury report at all as of right now. Josiah, is it me or has value been really bad this season? I've never seen a 3K sub or less player completely. Yeah, no, you're right, Zola. Like, that's what has made this season tougher. To me, it's not all the injury news and all that stuff. It's really just because we have not had great value. And when we have had good value, those are the nights where we're doing well. But lacking that value has just made things a bit more dart throwy, in my opinion. Whereas I think when we have good value, you can make more good strategic game theory based decisions on, hey, let me play this lower owned stud who's still in a good spot. Whereas when you don't have that same kind of value, it's a little bit more of a mixture. It's unfortunate, but hopefully things change here soon. Josh said you are correct, Zolo, because also they changed the rules on players sitting this year, so more guys are playing more than they have in the past. Yeah, I don't want to be that guy, but when the news came out of guys playing more and things of that sort, us getting the news in advance if someone's not going to play, I was one of those guys who just wasn't super excited about it because I was worried we might not get the news as early, but then also was worried that we just might not be able to get some of that same value when we get the news of, oh, hey, so-and-so is going to be resting today, so we just can go ahead and run with it. We've seen a lot less of those, hey, so-and-so's resting early in the season. Maybe it'll come back later. I hope it does, but it's been a little bit of a bummer, to be honest. Spread said early runs, I'm getting Oliver Prosper for whatever reason. He's just cheap. We're lacking value today, and we touched on it a little bit. I'm okay with Prosper if Tim Hardaway's out just because he sees decent run. He is kind of like an AO where he's a very low usage player, not super aggressive, typically from an offensive standpoint. So there's definitely still a lot of risk involved with him. And I don't plan on going there at least too much if Tim Hardaway's playing. But if he sits, I'm totally fine with it. Yeah. Yeah. The pricing has been tough too. The pricing has been tough. I will not. That hasn't been untrue at all. Let's see here. All right, so for the Bulls, we talked about most of them. Vucevic's really the only guy I like. All right, highest total game on the slate, and the Warriors are healthy. Curry has not had a lot of ceiling performances. I've been one of those guys who usually likes to have a little bit of exposure to him. I feel like if I stop doing that at this point, he's probably going to go off. This is a nationally televised game. This is the highest total game on the slate. So I'm okay with taking a shot on Curry here, but I don't think it's necessary. That ceiling just really hasn't been there since the first week of the season. Draymond is a bit more interesting at 6,900. Again, you never feel great about playing a guy like Draymond Green, but he makes a lot of lineups work the way that things are constructed right now. And so again, when it comes to the highest total game on the slate, I'm always a bit more comfortable getting exposure to the guys who are playing in it. So Draymond, as long as he stays around 16% ownership, I'm fine with it. If he starts to get around 30, 40%, I'm not going to be able to get any leverage on that kind of play. So I'll be less interested in him. But at 16%, I'm comfortable having around 30, 40% exposure to Draymond today, but wouldn't want more than that. Everyone else here are your dart throws. Klay Thompson can get hot, but it's rare. Wiggins can get hot, but it's rare. Not guys I'm looking at prioritizing on this slate. For me, it's really just Curry and Green that I'm looking at. Outside of that, with this team healthy, it's really hard to take shots on guys like Moody and Looney and Saric here. But yeah, I don't foresee myself getting there. It's really just Curry or Green, and then letting the DS do the rest. Let's see. Getting around field weight on Green and Andrew Wiggins a little bit, but not a lot. They're just priced well. They're priced appropriately. No real values there. Yeah, Phil, you guys are so spot on today. Like, it's either we are desperate for value like today, or we get the opposite on some slates where it's just so much value and you're trying to figure out how to prioritize it, and that can come up its own battles. But I would so much rather do that than have situations where there's no value. But it's still early, so I'm not overthinking it currently. Which chalk should you fade in a $100 single entry 44-4 tournament? We'll give it a look at the end and just kind of see who's looking super chalky. I don't hate that idea. Next up, we have the Suns against the Golden State Warriors. Guys, this is a team that I like, but I probably shouldn't feel as good about them as I do currently. Kevin Durant is currently listed as questionable. I am hoping he sits this one out. If he plays, you can't play any of the Suns tonight. It's just gross. They're all priced up. Really hard to get there. Grayson Allen has already been ruled out. Nasir Little's out. All that stuff makes sense. But Bradley Beal, the one and only, is currently listed as available. We do not know if he'll be on a minutes limit. We do not know how much he'll play. But I do know he's 6,900. And I like this matchup for him. And if KD is out, I expect him to see a nice increase in usage and to be a bit more aggressive. The only scary thing here is the minutes. Those aren't guaranteed by any means. It's his first game back, besides those 3 games he played earlier this season. But there's just not a lot to go off of here. But ideally, he stays super low owned, and I'll be significantly over the field on him. I think this is a good, nice, high upside spot for a 6K player. And of course, the 10,400 Devin Booker would also be someone I look at a lot, and I'll have a lot of exposure to if KD ends up getting ruled out. And then I'll be okay taking shots on guys like Gordon and Okogie. I don't want to go any lower than that if KD ends up missing this game. But again, a lot of ifs and wins and what ifs. If KD is out, we just have to wait for that news. Hopefully we get it early enough. If he ends up playing, again, I'm not going here at all. Josh said book auto lock if KD is out. I don't hate that at all. I'll probably be more so around 50% on him, to be honest. I do like some of the other pay up options on this slate. Zolo said Booker versus Clay, bad blood game. You know, Clay is a very emotional guy. And he's one of those guys that definitely can turn it on, even though sometimes it goes very badly for him. So a good narrative could make things a little bit more interesting for Clay. Booker is going to do his thing no matter what, though. Like I said, if KD's out, Booker's going to be, as long as I can make him a core play, his price tag might make that a little tough, but I'll be significantly over the field on him. Like that game. Next up, we have the Kings. Sabonis' price tag is finally more realistic at 9,500. I don't know who at DK was drunk and was making him a 10K plus player, because he doesn't have that high upside super consistently where he should be a 10K plus player. 9,500 is a bit more realistic for him. As of right now, I'm finding it hard to pay up for Sabonis. But I am going to try and make it happen as we go throughout the slate. And by the time we get to the pre-lock show, ideally I'll have some exposure to Sabonis and Fox. But right now, just because of the lack of value, I'm not able to get there currently. This is a game where I'm more so willing to play more of the mid-range guys, lower decent value, high upside plays with guys like Malik Monk is probably who I feel the best about just because he has the more consistent production out of these guys. But I think Keegan Murray and even Kevin Huerter are just as viable here. Harrison Barnes is more of your dart throw type of play. He plays plenty of minutes, but he's rarely as aggressive as you need him to be. And then outside of that, not overly excited about the other cheapies on this team. Looks like Trey Lyles is looking pretty chalky at 4K. Again, we're just desperate for value. I don't think he's a great player or anything like that. You just need him to make lineups work. Okay, let's see. So yeah, good game in general. Nice high total. It's the price tags that make it a little bit hard for me to fit in their studs, but I feel very comfortable with Monk, Murray, and Herter here. Zolo, who am I missing? Who do you like for the Kings? Because I want to like them a ton, but it's hard for me to pay up for them. Next up, we have the Clippers against the Kings. Again, really nice high total, really close spread, all the things that you look for when you're looking to target a game. This is where I will be tonight. Paul George disappointed last night. That sucked. Willing to go right back to him. Kawhi has been fantastic over the last few games. I am going right back to Kawhi here, and then James Harden. I will be over the field to all three of these guys, no questions asked. And then also, this is the back end of a back-to-back for them. So I totally am just creating narratives out of my ass here, but would love it if we saw some 2020, 2022 type of NBA performances here where one of these three sit tonight to give them some rest. That would make whoever is left a fantastic play. But yeah, even if everyone plays, I like all three of these guys tonight, and I'll be over the field to all of them. If I was doing a single entry line, I would probably still have two of either PG, Kawhi, or James Harden if I wasn't paying up for like a Doncic or a Jokic in that single entry line. That's kind of the way I would go about it. I like having my um some lines that most people aren't doing, trying to force in some studs. But then most of my lines will be balanced builds with PG, Kawhi, and James Harden because they have just as, they have a lot of upside for way cheaper of a price. Zolo, Sabonis has been pretty bad against the Clippers. Fox is the one who has had good games in the past. Yeah, okay. So prioritizing Fox there. I like that. Theo said, "What's up, Josiah? Hope you're doing well, Theo." Yeah, balanced build type of night. And then the lines where you want to get very different that no one else is doing, that's where you're kind of paying up for the Jokic's. I think Doncic will have some exposure, and then Booker if KD ends up getting rolled out. Kawhi is my favorite play. I watched the game they played a week/2 ago, and they had no one who could stop him. Yeah, Kawhi's just been on fire here lately. Even last night, he had a really good game. It scares me a little bit when we have a trail like this because they really can just rotate who that guy is. But I think Kawhi is looking like the strongest play out of the three. But I like all three. Thoughts on Norman Powell for value? Yeah, Norman Powell is totally fine for value. But with that said, I played him last night a little bit too, and that didn't go great. I mean, Powell's just your streaky shooter. That's the role he plays. He's honestly a bit too expensive for the role he's playing right now. But like you said, because we're desperate for value, Norman Powell is totally fine to have him in your mix. You can definitely do worse. It's just becoming one of those things where we're not always playing the best plays. We're playing guys who just make sense of our lines. And that's where guys like Powell kind of fit in. He's not a great play. He's not standing out. He's too expensive. But if he's like the last guy you put in your lineup, totally fine with that. Mo said, nice. Glad I'm not crazy. Yeah, Kawhi has been the alpha. It's funny. It's like a week or two ago, it was PG. And then Kawhi's been the guy over the last few games. And I personally think they look a lot better when Kawhi is the one dominating from an offensive perspective. But it also wouldn't shock me if they do want a little bit of a rotation. So teams do have to focus on more than just Kawhi. But yeah, love these guys. Adolfo, to be honest, I don't really mess with the total percentage for ownership for NBA. Sometimes I do for NFL, but for NBA, I just leave it where it is. I know you asked about who should we fade. For me, I don't usually go out of my way to fade chalk. I either just like the player or I don't. But let's see if there's any bad ones. Exum, I am fine with him, but if he's this chalky and Tim Hardaway's playing, I'll probably be just around field weight, not over. Oh, why is Reeves so chalky? That again, we're just desperate for value. 5,800. That's a little concerning. Hardy's looking really chalky. Again, I like Hardy a lot less if Tim Hardaway's not playing, or if Tim Hardaway plays. Derek Lively's fine. I don't hate this chalk because I can understand why it's happening. It's out of desperation more so than anything. Morris is looking really chalky. I need to look a little bit closer at him and see what I'm missing. I think it's really just a value play more than anything. But I'm not really seeing any just outrageously bad chalk. The only guys I would point to are just some of these Mavs guys. If Tim Hardaway plays, if they stay that chalky, then that's just stupid. But I don't think that will happen. And then Reeves does worry me a little bit, but again, I think you just have to have these 5K guys to help make lines work today. But we will see. Josh said, how many uniques should we possibly have? Currently got mine at 2. Should I move it to 3? I honestly always leave mine at 1, Josh. I like having my lines a little bit closer together. It really just depends on the type of player you are. If you have one unique per lineup, then it's more likely you can have lineups that are right next to each other with one guy being the differential between it. When you have 2 guys who are different between lineups, that means your lineups are going to be a lot more different. For me, I usually have a bit more trust in NBA and who I'm playing, and I want a lot of them, and I want just those one-offs because I'm usually just 1 or sometimes 2 plays away from hitting the nuts lineup. So for NFL, I'll do 3 uniques. For NBA, I only have 1 because I usually just trust my player pool that much. But I know a lot of sharp guys who do 2 or 3, but for me, it's 1. So yeah, guys, that's the slate in a nutshell. Of course, pre-lock show will be at 5:30 p.m. Eastern with me and Brandon. We'll go into a bit more detail on what we're actually doing on the slate. A lot less theory, a lot more. This is what we're doing, and we're riding with it. So hopefully, I'll see you all then. If you're interested in that, link is in the description. Feel free to use promo code BOB for a 10% discount there. If you're not into that, that's fine. I look forward to seeing you all tomorrow for round 2, where hopefully we're celebrating a good bit and we're taking some stuff down. Peace out. See y'all later.